Are there any questions before we start? Okay. If there are any questions, feel free to interrupt anytime or raise your hand or anything. So today we're going to talk about your projects, your master's thesis projects. So you all know you have to do a project, and this module is intended to support your projects as kind of a preparation for your projects. So for one-year master's students, your project is this spring and this summer. And for two-year students, it will be in the fall until next June. How many two-year students have we here in the advanced MSc? 2? 3? Okay. So the aim of a project is to demonstrate that you can work on something bigger and more long-term. There's a planning and management element. You already know how to plan your projects now from last week with Bob's Minutes of Meeting Protocol. You analyze a problem or a hypothesis, a question or idea, and then you design and implement a solution or analysis of that problem, question, or idea. You contextualize it. In other words, you look at the related work and you find out what has been done before on this topic, and then there's an evaluation. By the way, this is a very, very difficult part, the evaluation. A lot of students never quite get this, actually. So this module is supposed to support your dissertations, right, to inform you about how we conduct research, different research methods in computer science, and provide an introduction to these ideas. And if all goes well, you actually will start your dissertation in this module, if everything goes according to plan. So how you're assessed, so you have, for one-year computer science students, you submit a project plan, a dissertation with supplementary material, and you give a presentation. For two-year students, it's the same, but there are two more parts: the first semester progress report and a research paper. Here are the different project modules. You're all enrolled on a project module. Right, there are lots of different project modules. The kind of standard one is 4003, the MSc in computer science, but we also have one with an AI specialization. We have an HCI specialization. We have a data science one, cyber physical systems one. And then we have the two-year computer science, enhanced computer science degrees. And we have the same specializations, but for two-year, the enhanced two-year degrees. So this lecture is about the material on the Moodle page. So everybody knows this module has a Moodle page where we post all the teaching material. So the Moodle page is 4037. And in each of the modules, you'll find a student handbook section. Right? The document describes the project process in detail. There's also another special document called Bob's Project Guidelines that I highly recommend you look at in order to understand how to write your dissertation. Okay? And you'll find a copy of that on Moodle as well. So this is the rough timeline for the first year, one-year students. There will be a supervisor list released sometime in February. You find a project supervisor sometime in February and March. You start your projects in the April to June time frame. You also have to fill out an ethics checklist or an ethics form. You might have to fill out 2 ethics forms depending on what your project is about. There's a project plan submission in July. There's a dissertation and supplementary material submission in September, and your presentations are in September. Don't book your flights until you've found out the date of your presentation. Speak to your supervisor before you book your flights. So for the enhanced or 2-year MSCs, the timeline looks like this. The project supervisor list is released. You find a project supervisor. You start your project in September or October. You have the preliminary ethics checklist, the full ethics checklist, the project plan. The 2 differences are the first semester report, so that's like a progress report essentially. And there's a presentation sometime in the second semester, and then dissertations. This is also different. The research paper is different. So what is a project? A project is a substantial piece of work in computer science and its applications. It draws on the skills that you have developed in your taught modules. So you're learning all these valuable skills in your taught modules, and now you want to apply them to an actual project. And it shows your understanding of a very specialized or specific problem or application. In this module, we're going to have a lot of emphasis on how to find the related literature to your project and how to summarize it and present it. Right? Every dissertation will have a chapter 2. Chapter 2 is called related work. So this module will focus a lot on that related work section. How do you complete the related work section? And if everything goes according to plan, you will start writing chapter 2 in this module. Actually, you'll start preparing for chapter 2 with coursework 1. So coursework 1 is a focus on chapter 2, and coursework 3 is a focus on chapter 2. Like how to find out about the research related to your topic. So a typical project identifies a problem or asks a question or identifies a hypothesis. Or it could just be an idea. It could also be exploratory. Exploratory is a nice word to use when you're not sure what you want to do. You haven't got exactly a specific hypothesis or a specific question. You want to explore something. You have an idea. So you want to examine the existing approaches to your problem or your question, examine the research literature and existing technology, and explain how yours informs your project. Usually what you want to do is you want to look at what's already been done and then think about ways that there could be a better solution to what's previously been done. Like, is there a better solution to this problem, or is there something new that I can contribute to this problem? You want to do something new, right? So you develop software or you design an experiment to address a specific challenge or implement an idea. You might design an experiment to answer a question or test a hypothesis. Testing and evaluation usually involves something like testing your software, formal evaluation, user tests. That's when you test software with actual users. Or it could be statistical tests like performance analysis. Maybe you take an existing problem or an existing solution and your solution is faster than the previous solutions. That actually is a huge part of computer science. If you think about it, if you step back and think about it, the goal of computer science is just to make things faster. That's really what computer science is about. It's just to make things faster. And maybe enable new things to happen that weren't previously possible. A very boring example is email. Right? Before email, we used regular surface mail, so email just took that process and made it faster. So that's really what computer science is all about, making things faster. And if we want to measure performance, we need some statistical tests. We reflect on successes and limitations of a project, and we write a dissertation that provides an overview of the whole project. So this is your first big challenge, is finding a topic. Has anybody already lost sleep over this? Good. That means you care. This is not a very exciting slide, but it's very important, and it will affect the quality of your life in a very big way for a long time, for this year at least. Right? It's finding a project topic. So you want to really think about what's interesting to you. That's really what you want to think about, is like, what do I find interesting? Now, I will confess that when I was a master's student, I wasn't sure what I thought was most interesting. I really wasn't sure. I had some tendencies, some ideas, but I wasn't 100% sure. I knew that I liked visualization, and I knew I liked computer networks as topics. Actually, I didn't like AI as a topic at that time. The AI at that time was a little bit different than it is now. And so I just had a vague idea, and I thought, like, okay, if I'm not sure what topic I want to study, I will at least choose a supervisor that I think is a nice person. So I asked my friends, and I ended up studying visualization. So every supervisor will provide a list of project ideas, and you're not constrained to those ideas. You may have your own ideas, but these are something that you want to carefully consider, because the supervisors have put in a lot of thought into those projects already. And some of them might have a very, very clear idea of what they should look like and how they could go. You can contact a supervisor in person or email or on Teams, and you can find a list of staff. If you look at the list of staff, about 90% of of that list will be involved in master's thesis project supervision. Not every single one, but about 90%. There will be a sign-up process after this negotiation of finding a supervisor and discussing the topic. There is a sign-up process on Moodle, and you're not assigned until you're officially registered on Moodle. Right, so that is done by a supervisor, actually. Right, and there'll be some indication as to how many places are available, how many slots, and how many are taken, right, and how many are free during this sign-up process. So it's in your best interest to start a little bit early and be a little bit ahead of the curve, I would say. The longer you wait, the more these slots are taken. This taken slot, the number will increase over time. And the longer you wait, the higher that number is, and less available options there are. There will be some ethics form that you fill out when you first start your project. And you can find a copy or a link to the ethics forms on the Moodle page of this module. I don't go into the ethics forms in very much detail in this module because they're so boring, I feel like jumping off a bridge. So I don't want to talk about them very much, but there is a form that you will fill out about ethics, like are you doing something ethical or not, right? If you tick yes to any of the boxes on the form, you might need to do a full ethics review. This is really for user studies. So if you're performing a user study or designing a user study, the ethics forms become more important. Right? And a user study is something like sitting a person in front of a piece of software and then evaluating their interaction at a very close distance with that software, measuring the accuracy of their tasks and the response time of their tasks. So these are kind of the human-computer interaction studies that usually require 2 ethics forms rather than just one. If you're just downloading a data set and running some algorithms on it, that's a very simple ethics process. You just tick no to all the boxes and move on. If any special equipment is needed, you can ask your supervisor as it might be available to borrow or purchase from the school. If you need to subscribe to a data set, an online service, or pay for vouchers for participants, user study participants, this is also possible. But you need to ask early because those processes take a long time. The administration in the school is slow. I don't know if anybody has noticed that, but the administrative processes are slow and boring, and they take a long time. So you need to allow for that slow, inefficient process to carry out. And sometimes your project will involve collaboration with an external company. And this might involve a non-disclosure agreement. Again, that can be a very, very slow process. In fact, you can actually change the path of your master's student dissertation because sometimes the administrative processes are so slow. I've seen some that take 6 months, which obviously the supervisor has to make an adjustment to the project because 6 months in that time your project is already finished. Anyways, I had a project working with a company called Oakbrook. And I don't know why, but the administration was so slow, it took them like 6 months to process the non-disclosure agreements. So the projects were already finished by the time those non-disclosure agreements got processed. I have no idea why it took so long or what the holdup was, but it's a slow and inefficient administrative process. That's what the ethics form looks like. We're not going to go over it in detail. You can find a link to it on Moodle. To track your project progress, you use Bob's minutes of meeting protocol. You might meet weekly with a supervisor. You might meet every other week. There will be a lot of traveling during the summer, so you have to also think about that. This is the time where everybody travels over the summer. And you might think, well, that's a conflict in some ways, and it is a conflict in some ways. It is, but it's the only time that the staff has to travel. Essentially, is over the summer. A lot of students are traveling during that time too. So, what makes a good project? Are there any questions, by the way, so far about the projects? Question?
Well, you know that situation you said earlier about that student who was stuck waiting for an NDA. What happened?
So for any project that involves a company collaboration that relies on the company, there has to be a backup plan. So we were hoping that the company would supply a data set. It happened, but after 6 months. And so we had to find an alternative backup data set to make progress. That's very common, very, very common. It's very, very common. You're trying to collaborate with somebody and you're hoping that they will supply some data. Very, very common. In that case, you need a backup data set. And you talk about it with your supervisor. You say, what can we do as a backup plan in case this doesn't work? It's very, very common. Good question, by the way. Another question?
Yes. Does your project need to be like complex, like very complex, in terms of like practical implementation?
Does it have to be complex? It's difficult to define the word complex. The word complex is complicated. So I don't know how you define the word complex, but no, it doesn't have to be complicated, but it should reach a certain threshold of challenge. So that's a little bit different. You can be working on a very simple problem, a very non-complicated problem, uncomplicated, but it's still very challenging, right? So to run 100 meters in I don't know, whatever, 15 seconds is not complicated, but it's very, very challenging, right? So your projects have to, will reach a certain level of challenge rather than, I would say, complexity, yeah. And that's a good thing, right? You don't want an easy project or too easy, right? You won't have any feeling of accomplishment. If your project is too simple and too easy, you won't have any feeling of accomplishment. You won't learn anything. Like imagine you had a project to just watch 100 hours of Netflix, right? A lot of people think, oh, that would be my dream project, to just watch 100 hours of Netflix. But if you did that, you wouldn't be happy or satisfied at the end. You would just feel like stupid, like, oh my gosh, I just wasted 100 hours of my life watching Netflix or watching 100 hours of TikTok, right? So there's a certain level of challenge involved, and that will be a discussion with your supervisor. Yeah. Does that answer the question?
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions?
You said that the deadline is in September. Does it tend to be like the start, the middle, or the end of September?
The deadline for which?
For the submission.
For the dissertations?
Yes.
It tends to be, I think last year it was something like the 11th of September, around there. So early middle, I would say, yeah. Other questions? So a good project is a complete project, so it has a different number of elements, right? It has your literature review. It reviews the current technology. It shows competency in the design and implementation of your software or your experiment or your investigation. It evaluates the current technologies and the current solutions. And it shows that you've taken into consideration what's already been done. A good project also shows some innovation. It does not have to be original, but there's no requirement that says it must be brand new and original. But it's encouraged. It's encouraged that you work on something new and original. A good project has a thorough evaluation, like a thorough testing phase. This is very difficult, by the way. It also is written to a high standard. So now writing to a high standard is much easier than it used to be because you have so many software tools to help you with your language. It's well organized. It's easy to navigate and to understand. And if you want to see some examples of really, really high quality dissertations, you can visit my webpage. I have some dissertations, not all. I have a selection of the really good quality ones on there. You can download them and look at them. Top mistakes when doing a project: starting too late. This is the #1 mistake. That's why it's at the top. Starting too late. Students are professional procrastinators. They figure out a million reasons why they can't start yet. Like, I had a conversation with one student that said, I would encourage you to start your literature review like this week. And they said, no, that's not possible. No, it's impossible. I have exams. I'm so stressed out with all of my amazing exams. It's just overwhelming. I'm going to die. And I said, how many exams do you have? And then there was a long pause. One. That was the answer. Anyways, starting too late is a very common mistake. Yeah. Common mistake #2, not choosing a topic that you're interested in. So you really want to think hard about what you're interested in. You really want to think, because you don't want to work on a project that you're not interested in. This is the kind of a bad scenario. It's not a good scenario, right? You want to work on a project or a topic that you find interesting. A common mistake is not thinking about the evaluation. It's very difficult, the evaluation. How are you going to demonstrate that your project fulfills the mission that you described in the introduction? Right, you have a claim in the introduction that says, this project proposes a novel interface that solves this following problem. And then you have to demonstrate that you've actually solved that problem in the evaluation. Very difficult. Not reading Bob's project guidelines, very common mistake. This will show you how to organize your dissertation, what goes in each section. Some people don't read it. Not investigating the related work. That's not really going to be a problem, hopefully, in this class. Hopefully, in this class, everybody's going to engage. The idea is that the work you do in this class overlaps with your dissertation. That's the idea. You want to try to get the two to overlap as much as possible. Not getting help with the language, a very common mistake. There are so many language helpers, so much language assistance nowadays. There has never been more language assistance in all of human history than today. You can get language assistance from software, but you can also get it from people. There are lots of departments and people that your fees are paying for to get language help. So there's the Center for English Language Education. That's a resource that you can use, and it's what you paid for actually. There are many other resources. There's the Academic Language and Communication Skills Center. There's also the library, the Library Resources Learning Resources Center. You can find links to these on the Moodle page for this module. There's at the top, it's something like additional resources for this module, and you see these different language centers that are all about how to improve your language. Right? Using related literature as a substitute for actual progress is a very common mistake too. I see a lot of presentations where the whole presentation is just about the related work, and then the last 60 seconds, they say, "Oh, sorry, I ran out of time. I don't have time to talk about my project." That's a huge error, and that will dramatically reduce the number of points that you get on your presentation of your project. Very, very common strategy. Very, very common error. So for both 1 and 2 year students, the first deliverable is a project plan. This is all about the motivation of the project. Where did the project come from? Why is it important? That's really the major theme of the motivation. Why is it important, and why are you choosing this topic? Why are you studying this? Why do you think it's interesting? Right? What makes this problem or challenge interesting? What are the major ideas and how will they inform your work? This is also part of the related work. Right? Explain how you will organize your project. How will you break it down into smaller, manageable tasks? How long will each task take? And what are the dependencies between the different tasks? What happens, how are you going to handle delays? And what are the requirements? What are the basic requirements versus the optional enhancements? These are all things you want to think about in your project plan. The project plans are assessed. This is a little bit about how we assess the project plans. Is there a clear statement of what the project is about? Is there an explanation of why this problem is important? Why is sort of the key question in the project plan? Is there any novelty to the work? That's always exciting if there is some novelty. It's not a requirement, but it's nice if there is some novelty. Is there a clear statement of how the problem is going to be addressed or solved? What's the overall approach that you'll take to solve your problem? Is there some evaluation strategy? In other words, how are you going to demonstrate that you've achieved what you set out to achieve in the introduction? The introduction will say, I am going to do this, And I'm going to figure out a way to show you that it's successful, that I reached my goal. That's the evaluation. What kind of evaluation are you going to propose? Is there a breakdown into the research into smaller tasks? Is it appropriate? Is there a basic time plan, and is the time plan realistic? And a very common question I get is, does the project have to go according to the project plan? Was anybody wondering that? What happens if your project does not go according to this project plan? Does anybody know the answer already? You failed. No, nothing happens. Your project is guaranteed not to go according to this project plan. It's almost guaranteed. So you look at the project plan once, it's assessed once, and nobody looks at it again after that. It's history. So your project doesn't have to go according to this plan. And then there's a first semester report or a progress report for the students in the year 2 or enhanced MSc program. And it just is documenting what have you done so far to make sure that you're making progress on your project. There is a presentation, right, also called a viva, and it's usually given to 2 people, at least 2 people, your supervisor and then a second marker. There's usually 2 people that are scoring both your presentation and your dissertations. At least 2 people, actually. This could be slides, a set of slides. It could be, you could be demonstrating a piece of software. You could be showing a video. I highly recommend preparing a video or some other combination. And you focus on the aspects, especially on those parts of the project that are difficult to convey in writing. So things like interaction, anything that's moving, animation, time-dependent behavior, those are difficult to express in writing. So your presentation is going to really show those elements. And again, there's a document and there's a link to it on Moodle called Rob's Project Guidelines that gives you a very detailed table of contents. What does the structure look like? What does the introduction look like? How do you actually write an introduction? It shows you actually how to write the introduction. Like, what does the first paragraph, what do you actually put in the first paragraph? What do you put in the second paragraph, third paragraph, and fourth paragraph? And how many paragraphs should it be? So it goes into really a lot of detail. So those guidelines, there's been more work put into those guidelines than a lot of the projects themselves. Surprisingly. Yeah. And then there's a word count for those. There's a marking rubric. I won't go into detail about the marking rubric because even if I discuss it now, you'll forget about it because it's so far in the future. But you'll be given access to that marking rubric closer to the time that your dissertations are scored. And you can always refer back to this slide. There'll be supplementary material with your dissertation. I encourage you to produce a video. So in this module, you will learn how to produce a video. And you really want to produce a video that complements your dissertation, that summarizes what you've done, that shows the software that you've worked on, the interaction with the software, it gives a demonstration. And you can upload your source code to either GitLab or GitHub. You have some demonstration video. You might have ethical approval documentation. You might have design documents or planning documents, minutes of meeting, test plans and results, user guides, transcripts from user tests or some sort of evaluation, video or audio examples from your evaluation. You might have Java doc or Doxygen documentation. You might have a large data set as supplementary material or a link to a large data set. And you might have links to your videos. Right? These are all part of supplementary material. You won't have all of these, but these are all things that you might have. Certainly most of you will have source code repository and a demo video as part of your supplementary material. Any questions about that? For the 2-year enhanced MSc students, you'll also have a supplementary research paper. So that's typically 4 to 10 pages, and you write up your project in the style of a research paper. And it's the level of writing is a little bit more advanced. It's aimed at a higher, more specialized audience. So a key objective is to provide practice writing for an academic audience, like other researchers. And if you've done a really, really good job, you can also submit this to a conference or a journal. This is not going to apply to most of you. Only a very, very small fraction of students will get to this level. But for those that are interested, that really are feeling really ambitious, you can write up your thesis and then submit it to a conference or a journal and present it, like go somewhere and present it, right? This is an example of one. So this was an example of a master's thesis that was very special. So we wrote it up. These are master's students. These are all former master's students. And we wrote it up as a conference paper and then presented it in Germany at a conference. So really interesting work. What they did was they did something new. If you do something new, then it's possible to publish it. Of course, it does take, it takes work. It doesn't come for free, right? But it's very special, right? They've made a contribution to science. And you can find a link to that paper here on the slides or on my webpage or wherever you want to look. Okay, there's a little bit about academic integrity. I think everybody understands academic integrity, right? No plagiarism. And yeah, these are some final remarks. The most important thing is to find a topic that you enjoy. That is, if you have to think about, remember one thing from today, it's try to find a topic that you're interested in. Any questions about projects? Question?
But I wonder if a 4 to 10 page paper includes the reference or not?
Yes, it could or it might, it could or it could not. It might, but probably not. Yeah. Usually the references take up 1 to 2 pages. Yeah.
So how many slides will be suitable for the paper?
4 to 10.
4 to 10?
Yeah, plus 1 to 2 pages of references. Yeah. Other questions? Okay, before we wrap up, I want to make a little special announcement. I'm pregnant. No, I'm just kidding. I don't know where that came from. This is about Friday's workshop. So Friday's workshop is going to be new. And this is based on my experience of interacting with students. Like I asked you last week, are there any topics that you'd like to cover? And one student said, yes, there is a topic that I want to cover, and it's writing CVs. So on Friday, we're going to look at CVs. This is what Friday's workshop looks like. I'm telling you now if you want to prepare. That's why. Is anybody interested in having their CV reviewed and getting improving their CV? Yeah, I think everybody is actually. Unless you want to stay unemployed. I won't make any jokes about living off benefits. So we're going to form groups of 6 to 8 on Friday. Before that, it's good to review the top errors when writing a CV. So this is a link to the top errors when writing a CV. You want to look at that and remove your errors. Take them away. There's a list of the most common errors in the video description. You review each group member's CV, that should say CV. Identify the errors and parts that can be improved. And then you choose one CV from each group to be reviewed by myself in class. I will review it in class, and I will point out the ways, the mistakes, and the ways that it could be improved. So, for anybody that's interested, bring your CV on Friday. Digital copy of your CV. Okay, you're all free. You're all free to go.
Thank you.